You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 135. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. Now, you know I have an obsession with authors, and I am learning all I can about the publishing world as I'm writing my book. And we know there's self-publishing and we know there's traditional publishing, but there's also a version of hybrid publishing where you, the author, invest a portion of finances along with a publisher and you work collaboratively. So today, my guest is Angela Engel, who is the founder and CEO of the Collective Book Studio. She's a collaborative publisher. This means that she works with you in publishing your book. She's also a mom of 3 girls, is doing all of this in her work while being a mother. And we're going to discuss what that kind of looks like and what balance means to both of us. And here's a hint, there's no such thing. Today, you're going to learn about what collaborative book publishing means, what it looks like, what kind of an investment you should be considering if this is the route that you're going to go in, but then also just what the book publishing industry looks like as a whole and why the changes have been coming around that we've seen. We also flash back to what some bookstores used to look like, and I giggled when she mentioned one in particular, so see if you can catch it. This is a great, honest conversation for you to listen to if you're thinking about writing a book and looking to figure out how you're going to get it out into the world. So enjoy this chat I had with Angela and all of the information you're going to learn because it's certainly an educational interview. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Michelle. It's great to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to chat with you, a fellow Bay Arean, a book lover, and a mom. Can you take a moment to introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Hi, I am Angela Engel, the publisher and founder of the Collective Book Studio. I have a 20-plus career in book publishing in the sales, marketing, and business development side, and I live in the Bay Area and a mom of 3 girls.
3 girls. Are they? They're not teenagers, right?
I actually do have one. She's about to be in 9th grade next year, and a 4th grader, and a girl that's just finishing kindergarten.
All such different ages. I'm a stepmom, and my stepkids are 23 and 20. So I'm now on my second round of like going through all of the growth changes. Since I have a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. Yeah, it's interesting.
Totally. There's definitely a wide range, but I love having almost a 14-year-old girl like in a week and a 6-year-old. It's, I never knew how blessed I would be. Like I didn't kind of honestly plan that age difference. And yet it's so wonderful, honestly, to have the help.
Yes. Yeah. And see, ours are 12 months and 3 weeks apart, and we didn't plan that age difference.
Oh my.
But now it's great because they're like built-in best friends and, they did everything together. So it's nice it's funny how it turns out the way you didn't plan.
Always, right? Always.
Yes. So can we talk about your career? Because you now own your own company, but you worked for others before.
Yeah. I had a really blessed career, I feel like, and I still am blessed. Right out of college, I'm a University of Oregon grad. I'm a duck. I comparative lit major and creative writer, and I came to the San Francisco Bay Area and I applied for an assistant marketing job at a publishing company in Berkeley. It was a large distribution company now that's bought by Ingram. So if people are familiar with any sort of the book publishing world would kind of know They're like one of the largest now distributors of books in the country, if not worldwide. So it was a really great, exciting time. This was over 20 years ago. And it wasn't where there was like this boom of self-publishing. There was something, Amazon was a book retailer just much as Walden Pond at the mall. There was New York Times bestsellers like The Four Agreements, which I was on the marketing team for, The Power of Now. When 9/11 hit, it was 7 stories. Had a book by Noam Chomsky called 9/11. So it was a really exciting time for independent publishing. And that's sort of what I got to grow up here in the Bay Area.
Isn't that funny? You mentioned things that I totally forgot about, like going to the bookstore at the mall, Walden, and that Amazon actually was a bookseller at one point. They didn't just deliver your groceries or clothes within 24 hours. It's definitely interesting how it's all turned around, and now we see more self-publishing. Why do you think we see more self-publishing? Because it's just that much harder to get an actual deal?
That is like such a multi-layered, good question. I think it really depends on the category that you're publishing in. I think that there has been first of all, honestly, there's just too many books being published. I mean, I think there was like a statistic with all the self-publishing, 1 million books were published in the last year. And, I think that there is a backlash of people feeling shut out, debut authors, new voices, how hard it is to build your platform. Basically have to be a politician or a celebrity to get published or have this huge platform. You don't necessarily have to be a writer. You could, these large celebrities, obviously there's a ghostwriter involved and everything else. So I think that is part of frustration that definitely happened. I think self-publishing is a business, and Amazon was able to seize that business, right? It's a tech platform, and they're looking at technology. And if you think about the way technology and social media have really boomed, right? All of the ways that even our own print magazines are now really focused on the digital component of media. So books have gone there too, right? I think the danger of self-publishing is the lack of quality control.
Yes. I can't, I'm one of those people who, if I'm reading your book and I can see grammatical errors or edits I would make, I'm like, it's making it really tough to get to the next page because that's all that's on my mind. And if you're self-publishing, I think that people also don't realize how much time and money goes into it to do it the right way.
Yeah. I mean, we get, pitched all the time, and, people are like, but I could like self-publish this. And I did, and I don't understand why it didn't really work. And we're like, well, did you hire an editor? They're like, well, I hired my brother to take a look at it. He's got an English degree. Or my sister-in-law, or, it's just like, no, I kind of almost think about this. You pay to get your nails done. You pay to get your hair done. Like, please pay at least minimum for an editor, a professional editor to look at your book.
Yes. Preach. Keep preaching.
I mean, gosh. I mean, yeah, at least minimum if you're self-published, do that. And also a professional designer. Don't be like, oh, I took a course and in college and now I'm like a book designer, and you could, because on Amazon's platform you can upload a PDF.
It's cringeworthy, right?
for me as someone who's been in the industry for 20 years, yes.
So tell me about your company and what makes it different.
Yeah. So I come from a world of, I'm going to be really clear, I'm not versed in like fiction and memoir. I'm really versed in visual books. So I think also self-publishing is going to make me cringe a little bit because I'm into children's and cooking and like lifestyle, self-help, like things that like really you need a printed, beautiful quality, where you can smell the paper. So I just want the listeners to understand that I come from that kind of I went to 10 Speed Press, which published many of these awesome cookbooks like Boulevard, if anyone's eaten there, and, Cake Bread Cellars and Napa and Mustard's Grill. So I come from a very different type of publishing. And then I went to Chronicle Books here in San Francisco, which is just a pioneer in so many gift formats and incredible titles. So I come from that kind of world. And within that world, there's a lot of custom publishing with brands. I worked on Splenda's cookbook. I've worked on Hostess Twinkies cookbook, Sutter Home's Build a Better Burger cookbook. So I'm used to custom publishing. Even I did Top Chef. When they first came out, Top Chef, the network bought like 10,000 copies of that book. And that was really kind of a hybrid custom deal within a traditional publisher, right? At Chronicle. So I knew that this existed in publishing, right? Where there were buyback parts of the concept, like, the contract. So I always say a traditional contract with a traditional publisher doesn't mean that it's wholesome. And I think that that's also why self-publishing really has boomed, is that people have seen that, like, I'm giving over all of my intellectual property and I'm not really getting a ton in return. And then the publisher owns it for life. So I saw the need. I saw people, why they wanted to self-publish. They wanted a platform. They have a speaking gig. They have a business to move forward. And they keep saying, you got to build your platform and you have to wait 3 years. I mean, that is ridiculous. So I actually left publishing for about 5 or 6 years, I can't quite remember, because I met an incredible woman named Christiane Lemieux who ran a brand called Dwell Studio, which was in Target at the time. And we came up with a book idea in the same room with the fashion buyer as the book buyer. And in that moment, the designer, and she had a brand, it was bought now, but she said to me, "Can you come work for me?" And I left and went to help her kind of I worked with Amazon with her and Nordstrom's and very large accounts, Giggle. And we sort of cultivated this concept in fashion. Okay, for example, Whole Foods, they said, "Angela, we really love this on the blanket, but we don't want to sell it as a baby blanket. Can you make it on a baby onesie, on a layette?" And we were like, "No problem." And in 10 months, this pattern is in stores at Whole Foods. And so I saw that in fashion, how quickly you move, how you react to retail. And I saw that in publishing, we're like a snail.
Yeah.
We're just slow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so people are tired of publishing being so slow too, and not really listening to the market. And so that's how my company, the Collective Book Studio, we started. I was like, what if we could surpass all of these timelines and really listen to authors, creators, brand makers, and make beautiful books and get them on shelves within a year to 18 months. And have full distribution, not be bound by an Amazon online platform, but really be sold at the Strand and, Barnes & Noble and Powell's Bookstore here in the Bay Area, Books Inc., like all of our favorite bookstores. And that's what I did.
And so how do you do that? Like, you don't have to give away your secret sauce, but how is it that you can surpass all of these timelines when these ginormous publishers are taking 2 years plus?
Because I'm sharing the budgets with my authors. So I call my company called a partnership publishing house. So meaning we have a very rigorous submissions process. We see if it's something that works with us and our brand and it was aligned with sort of the kinds of books that we like to do. I do a lot of women's voices. I have a book called Dear White Women, which is an anti-racist book that's incredible. I have a book called A Little Less of a Hot Mess, which is a mom's guide. And this is with a therapist who has really addresses anxiety. And, we really take a look at our submissions. We really vet them. And then what we do is we talk with a developmental editor that's really, really good in that space about the project. And we get a bid from them. And then our authors pay into that, right? They pay in and they invest in the work. Then they own the work. And I actually only am asking for a 5-year distribution deal versus lifetime. And they also retain a lot more of their rights. So like they can buy the art, meaning that they can, sell it on, I don't know, coffee mugs if they chose.
Sure. Merch. Yeah. Well, right now, I just want to come over and raid your bookshelves because they all sound like really great work.
Yeah, they are really fun. Well, what are you into, Michelle?
I love everything that you just talked about. And I do a mixture of my reading as part fiction. I read fiction at night before bed, but then I read a lot of nonfiction, memoirs, leadership books, things that'll help me grow as a person, whether it's in business or really just as an individual, as a human, to be better and to learn about outside things that I don't experience. So I love all the titles that you dropped.
Yeah, no, it's really true. I mean, well, especially because I'm in the nonfiction space, right? Like I love nonfiction. I always say this to people, because often we get pitched memoir and that's not what we do. And memoir is a category and a beast all on its own. And people sometimes go, what's the difference, right, with a nonfiction book that you do? And I always say, a great nonfiction book is there to solve a problem for the reader.
Yes.
A memoir that's not the goal of the memoir, right? A memoir in a bookstore often is in a space with a novel. It's a very different category all to itself.
Yeah. And I love a memoir that feels like you're kind of like watching a movie.
Correct. It's a different genre.
Yeah. So now you've done all of this and you've raised 3 girls while doing it.
Yes, I have. And I'm raising them now.
And before we hit record, we both were talking about how balance is complete and utter nonsense and we don't believe in it.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I actually read this article. I wrote this piece on my blog in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, right? So like, come on, now I should rewrite this thing. But like in February of 2020, I read this article and it was all about mastering motherhood, right? And I got really angry and I was like, I don't love that concept. So I actually wrote on my blog what I call OOO equals success, out of office equals success. And it really has to do with my career journey, which was I rose up really quickly in publishing. I'm in my late 20s and early 30s. I have a big job at Chronicle Books. I'm, a senior director of mass market sales. I sell to Costco and Target and Bye Bye Baby, as well as When Babies Are Us and Toys R Us was a big chain, Staples, Office Max. I mean, you name it. It's probably as a shopping cart and I sold it. And I was in these large corporate rooms. And honestly, at that time, that's over almost, 14 years ago when I had my first child, there wasn't pumping rooms, and I would go into a utility closet to pump. And I just started to get tired and I wanted to have another baby. And, me going into the fashion and baby fashion world was like a way to sort of also do a trade show, a trade show with wearing my baby in an ergo. Like, so I've really had this kind of ability in my career to sort of figure out where my family's at, but it's never been like balanced. It's just been like a way that works for me. That's why I don't think you can master motherhood. We're always on this journey to master ourselves, and that looks really different for everybody.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about mastering motherhood, it's going to be different no matter who you are, but then your children too. You even if you have 2 children made from the same 2 people, they're totally different individuals. So you can't master one and then think that you're going to master mothering the other one too. It just doesn't work that way.
Exactly. And I write in this piece, I I don't have like a work self and a home self. Like you can't really divide that. And you can't really divide your motherhood part too, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I find it at my own company, partly, in a reaction to watching, so many great friends leave houses, developmental editors and designers, and knew I could cultivate them together under one roof and one service. And I also did it because I wanted to figure out a career path for myself that I might be able to, make my own time, which is really lovely for my kids, right? Like I can work from anywhere now, but I could when I founded my own business in end of 2019.
Yeah. And it's amazing to be able to shut it down. I block my calendar at a certain time every day because I can. And I think that
Exactly.
it's a beautiful thing, but we also have to learn how to be able to do that because just as you came from working for someone else, I worked in the corporate world too. And you don't just get to block your calendar because, the kids are going to come home from school. So it's definitely a learning curve in that mastery sort of way of, mastering your own time.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say there's like no such thing of mastering motherhood or mastering or extent. It's like this never ending process, right?
Yes.
Of seeking self and striving for our own personal like brand of success. That's what I think.
Absolutely. So what kinds of books are you looking for now? Do you have like a wish list of people who would come to you?
I mean, always. I mean, I love food and wine. Like anytime I
love food and wine too.
I mean, anytime I can get a food, wine, drink book, like I would jump on it. They're just extremely costly to produce. So, those budgets are hard to get. And, I think people are always like, wow, like it's also like really hard to do a really great cookbook, right? Like you really need a lot of eyes on there and the recipe testing, or at least, really a really great, we have an awesome developmental editor who is at Amy Treadwell, who is at Chronicle Books for 18 years in food and wine. And now she's with us. And so, but she deserves to be paid for her work. She's just so good. So but I love that. I always love a great children's book, but also what I call leadership, light, maybe business light, maybe it's called. Like leadership books are really important to me. I think women's voices in that space is really important to me. If there's something that could be solved, a problem, I have a book that I'm hoping she'll finish her manuscript because it's called Quiet Selling. And I love that idea of like, how do we, she kind of addressed introverts, but all of us, how we can use a different kind of method of selling. And I think that's she comes from a really interesting corporate background and has worked for like Yahoo and LinkedIn and all of the Salesforce and some really big places. So I hope Christine can finish her manuscript because I can't wait to publish her book. And
hope you're listening, Christine.
I know. Sure. I'm gonna give her this podcast episode. So I hope that makes people realize like if you can solve a problem, I'm interested in that book.
And can I ask you for those listening, because I think that they, self-publishing costs money. Like what kind of budget should someone who wants to work with you really consider that they're going to have to spend and invest in themselves for this book to happen?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends on the shape of the writing because ghostwriters, which are extremely expensive, can cost anywhere between $10,000 and $75,000 really easily is a big investment. And so usually with that kind of thing, when we know that it's like really needs a ghostwriter, we actually are really honest and then more try to pair them with somebody that they can pay directly. And, I think it's a myth to think that. I think that's what's the hardest thing is that why self-publishing, everyone's like, well, I didn't really have to invest and I didn't have to hire a ghostwriter. And so I can self-publish the book. But is the book any good, right? Is the book your brand? Now so I think that's really different than when people have really taken the time to like look at their courses or look at their what they're writing already, maybe for a TEDx talk or whatever, and really put it to pen to paper and a real strong outline, have actually done comparative research and are really serious about publishing, right? A developmental editor is what you need. You don't necessarily need a ghostwriter. You can write that book, and we have that kind of developmental editor to help you with structure and tone, and does this make sense? And that's what we love to do, and talk about the package. So, but most of our books, you do need a really strong developmental editor, and that's not just a copy edit or a line edit or a proofread. That's somebody really going in with you and talking about what is going to make your book stand out for the readers. And so that, I would say, for a nonfiction, 40 to 50,000, where this is just off the top of my head, book, you're going to have to be kind of prepared to pay between $14,000 and $17,000 in a creative fee, all said and done. And then it depends on how much you want to print the books. But I think you're going to look at, a $20,000 to $25,000 investment.
And I think there's a myth that authors all make a lot of money. And when you look at that kind of an investment, how many books you're going to have to sell to make that return. So why do you want to, publish the book and create this work of art for yourself? I think these are all questions that someone should ask themselves, going into it, versus I'm just going to write this and hope for the best that I'm going to make a ton of money, but I'm not going to invest anything, financially into it.
Exactly. I mean, listen, I always say a book, you have to look at a book as a catalyst. Like, for example, is the book going to get you speaking gigs, right? And yet, do you really want at the back of your speaking gig, you did this incredible TEDx talk, and then you want to be in the back of the room with your square selling a really bad paperback with typos? Is that really how you want, what you want to leave people with?
Right.
Or did you get paid a few $1,000s, up to $10,000 to speak, and you have a published book that was vetted by and is able? And do you have maybe the Books Inc. selling in the room with you? And because buyers are discerning, and they should be. They can't buy every self-published book. But I'm very clear. The criteria that a good hybrid or partnership publishing has to have is full distribution, and they have to be very clear with their submissions process and actually have guidelines. And honestly, I would be wary, if I was an author, of any company that has no submissions guidelines, that has no contract, right, in place with you. Those are really weird
red flags.
People, red flags.
Yes.
That's basically, they're really an online, service to help you get onto Amazon's KDP. That's not a publisher.
Yes. I love this. You're opening up so many eyes, I think, for myself, for others. And I love that you're raising 3 amazing girls and doing this at the same time, putting people's voices out into the world. It's awesome, Angela.
Thank you. I mean, I've been called a disruptor, but this is really because I also, when you invest in your work, I give back up to usually, 50% of the royalties back to the author. So it's not like, publishing is the long game. I want to tell everybody who wants to write a book, it's about the long game. And if you have a goal in mind and you really believe in the project, don't let everyone tell no, but there's a lot of book coaches and writers. There's, no matter what, people are going to have to pay to be part of organizations. You can't just be expected to not pay anything and sell your book. It's even traditional pub authors, they're putting quite a lot of money into building their platforms, into other areas of their work in order, or using the advance to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Where can everyone find you?
Okay, that's a great question. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, just Angela Engel on LinkedIn. And I'm the founder and publisher of the Collective Book Studio, which is really easy website, thecollectivebook.studio. I also love Instagram, and I will get on the DMs at the Collective Book Studio. I know we're on Twitter and we're on TikTok or Book Talk a little bit, but I don't really monitor those, probably because my 14-year-old girl would kill me if I'm on those platforms. So we kind of have this pact where like let my marketing team do that, but I still love to reach out on Instagram DMs, and so I would just do that, either LinkedIn, Instagram, or reach out to us on our website.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, friends, I don't know if you were shocked at the dollar amount that Angela dropped. I'm not, because I've been doing a lot of research on my own into what goes into writing a book, into creating it, and to getting it out into the world. It's an investment, but as Angela mentioned, it's one that's going to represent you, and it's going to represent you for years and years to come. So look at it as a long-term investment, not something that's going to make you rich by tomorrow, not something that's going to make you popular or famous by tomorrow, but something that is going to be with you forever. If you're interested in reaching out to Angela and learning more about the collaborative book publishing process, please do. I would love to see more food and wine books because I'm a lover of food and wine, but also because they're beautiful books. I encourage you to write that book that you've been thinking about, that you have been contemplating, outlining. Go do it, because the world wants to read it. Until next week, my friends, start writing your book and start the process today.